Well, thanks for joining me tonight for a visit. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, go ahead and tell us who you are and how long you've been braiding.
I'm My name's Gerardo Gonzalez. From Fallon, Nevada, and I've been braiding, probably for maybe about 6 years now, I guess.
Okay.
2018, roughly 2017, something like that.
Okay.
hmm
Um, I kind of want to start at the beginning. So, what was your childhood like?
I grew up in California. I was born and raised in California, Hollister, California, and San Juan Bautista, California. So Hollister, California is the San Benito County Horse Show, Saddle Horse Show, and San Juan Bautista is about 11 miles away from there, and it's a little mission town. So that's kind of the one of the hubs for, I guess, like the Vaquero and the California traditions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, were horses a part of your growing up?
um, yes, my dad always had horses and cows when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, didn't have too many horses, I guess. Like I said, he always had one or two. Um, and he's the one who taught me how to ride. I don't know if it was very proper or nothing. He'd always just kind of, here, get on it. And then we'd go somewhere and I'd end up getting bucked off or whatever as a little kid. So, and he thought it was pretty amusing. So I think that
Right.
that's why he did it.
Probably. Probably. So, do you ride now?
No, I haven't ridden probably in about 2 years, I guess.
Okay.
And that's when I moved from California to Nevada. I had a gelding that I got since he was probably about a year and a half old or so, and then started him, put some time on him, and everything like that, and then kind of things started switching around, and um, quit my job, moved to Nevada, and I just really didn't have time to keep that horse. So I gave him back to the girl I got him from, and actually here like probably a couple months ago, I'd seen that she'd posted something on Facebook that a little girl had it down in Southern California, and she had turned it into a hunter jumper.
Oh, cool.
So I was happy to know that he actually became something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, in your horseless life, you braid rawhide. What's the draw?
Um, I've always been kind of attracted to it. I mean, I guess like everybody else says, you tend to gravitate towards it because out of necessity type thing, and it's something that you really can't afford. I mean, you go
Yeah.
to Capriola's and you look around and you're like, oh wow, this is like super cool stuff. But I mean, I don't know, you cowboy and you can't afford it. So
Yeah.
you end up learning how to make it.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, I wish I would have started a long time ago. And that would have been like 20 years ago when I cowboyed for Ellison Cattle Company. Um, there was a guy there, Tom Hudson, and he came out one day and he's like, "So you guys want to learn how to braid rawhide?" And yeah, so he's like, "Come on out to the barn." So we went out to the barn with him, and he had us scrape a hide that he had there. And we were like, "Oh, this is cool. We're going to learn how to do something." Well, we went back to the bunkhouse and we ended up tying a Spanish ring knot. So that was kind of the interest. My dad had showed me a couple buttons when I was a kid. Like a two-strand Turk's head, 3, 4 strand, that way. Um, but it never really stuck. I mean, it was just something that I don't know. I just put it on the back burner, and then
Yeah.
now I kind of kick myself in the rear and go, if I would have started that a long time ago, I might have been a little bit better than what I do now. So,
Yeah.
but
But you're raising kids and that all takes
yeah,
time too. So,
right. And I'm happy where I'm at with it. I mean, I'm really really happy with where I'm at with it.
yeah.
But
Who would you say had a major influence on your braiding?
Everybody that I've come across along my journey with it.
Yeah.
I've been really, really fortunate to meet absolutely fantastic people throughout. So, I mean, I mean, I could single out a bunch of people, but I don't think that that'd be fair to anybody else. So, you know, I hung around Randy Roberts for a long time, for a couple years, until he moved to Oklahoma. I actually helped him move to Oklahoma and helped him put a shop together there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was in California, he would actually, you know, we would talk and stuff like that. I met Randy in 2019 at the second rawhide gathering that I attended in Decatur, and we just totally hit it off, became super good friends and everything like that. And then he lived in Troy, Idaho, and he'd always tell me, "Oh, you need to come up, you know, make some rawhide together, and we'll, you know, braid and do this and that." And Troy, Idaho from California was like a 20-hour drive from where I was. So I was like, well, I can't really do that. So when I moved to Nevada, we were talking again. He's like, oh, shoot. He says, you're not that far away. He says, you're only like, you know, 4 to 6 hours away. He
Oh,
says, you
wow.
should come up. So made a trip out of it and got into making rawhide with him and stuff like that. And then pretty soon, we're like, man, I mean, we partnered up on it and we made a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and pretty soon we're driving, you know, 6 hours round trip to um, Burley, Idaho, and we're picking up 50 hides at a time and coming back to his place and putting up 50 hides in a 2 week span.
Yeah. Wow.
And then apart from that, we would sit down and braid and um, you know, kind of do an assembly line type thing, to where, you know, he would get a core and we would both braid bodies, and then he would start a nose button and then hand it off to me, and then he'd start the other nose button. And I mean, it was just kind of an assembly line process like that. And it was super good camaraderie for the both of us, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
You know, I learned a lot from him. I don't know if I contributed to anything that he that he does, but I mean, we sure helped each other out, and
Yeah.
he's, you know, one that really stands out for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, he's a great guy. I can't wait to meet him.
yeah, he is a good guy, super, super good guy.
Yeah. Um, would you talk to us a little bit about the Spanish influence? I feel like you kind of have a leg up on the history part of that, from those of us who, I mean, I have some family influence, but there's a lot of people who just are trying to learn off the internet,
Right.
you know?
Um, well, like, what do you want to know?
Well, I want to, I want to know, is it a Bozal or a Hackamore?
um, well, I mean, you're kind of going to make me a bad guy here, I guess.
I got a follow up, so you're good.
um, talking to my dad, I always talk to my dad about stuff like that. You know, I kind of lean back on him and ask him questions. I'll call him and say, hey, you know, this and this and that. You know, I heard this, and you know, how do you say it, or how do you pronunciate that, or you know, is this the correct way, and so on and so forth. And he's always told me that regardless of what it is, a bosal is a bosal is a bosal.
Yeah.
That's just it. Um, you know, it's like if you're gonna go tack up your horse, you know, and you would tell your kid, hey, you know, go bring me the bosal. I mean, that's
Right.
just what it is. And maybe that comes from them being probably just, you know, they weren't rich or nothing like that. They were poor folks. So I would assume that they probably just had, you know, one bosal.
Yeah.
So that's probably where it comes from, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what I know on that.
Okay.
type of thing. Um, obviously there's size differentials, differences that way. You go from your little pencil bolsalillos like that for your get downs, and then on up to your 3/4 or 1 inch bolsadas that way,
Mm,
which ends up being a hockey mize, what a
right.
bigger bolsada would be that way,
Right.
uh, which in turn has come around to being a hackamore
Mm-hmm.
in the English language, I
Mm-hmm.
guess that per
So
se.
is it a Bosalito or a Bosalita?
Um, I call them bolsalillos.
Okay.
Um, I don't know where the terminology switches or whatever. Like in the Charo world, um, they use, and that's what they call it, is a bolsalillo.
No tea in it. Oh,
No T.
no
No.
tea. If we have a dozen rawhiders in a room, how many opinions do we have?
If there's a dozen in there,
Yeah.
oh, you're gonna have 100 different opinions. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll have different opinions a bunch. That's why I say you're kind of gonna make me a bad guy here.
No, because there's not, there's not, I think the real answer is it's regional. So it's not that
Yeah,
you're,
I think so. Yeah.
it's just depends on where you're from. Um,
Yep. Yep.
but like I said, you have a little different flavor on this than some of us do, and I wanted to definitely talk about that.
Sure,
Um,
absolutely.
what was your goal when you started braiding?
To get into it and not give up.
Okay. What's your goal now?
To not give up. And at be better at what I like doing.
Yeah.
I try to braid every day. I try
Hmm.
to do something every single day, whether it's just tie a button, um, cut string.
Hmm.
Um, if I'm always on the hunt for hides. I have a guy that I work with, and they're few and far between. You wouldn't figure that here in Nevada. You would think that they'd be knocking on your door trying to get hides to you, and I have a hard time finding hides. Um, but I enjoy making hides.
Hmm.
That was one of the things when I did get into it. I just didn't want to learn how to braid. I want to learn how to make my own rawhide.
Yeah.
Um, so even like before I even met Randy, um, I was getting hides from a butcher friend of mine that he would contact me, and they weren't the best hides in the world or nothing like that. But I sure learned how to scrape hides with a pocket knife, and how to flesh hides. Um, Kind of rough cut string. I mean, it was very, very crude. Um, but that was one of the things that I really, really wanted to do. I wanted to do both of the things, and because I think myself that, and this is just my opinion, you need to understand how to work that hide and make it into rawhide so that you can turn it into strings to braid. Um, and obviously it's a big, huge, huge learning curve.
Yeah.
Um, if you don't, I mean, I could send somebody string all day long, but if you don't know how to temper it and you don't know how to work it, it's not going to work out in the long run for you.
Yeah.
So that was one of my main goals, is to learn the whole aspect of the raw hiding portion of it that way.
Would you talk a little bit about what makes a good hide?
Um,
Like if you could pick any old cow in the whole wide world, what would you pick?
Probably, well, everybody likes red hides. Longhorn hides are really good.
Hmm.
Longhorn, and that's kind of making all that rawhide with Randy like that. That's what we ended up kind of figuring out, that Longhorn hides are probably your premium hides that way. Um,
Does it not matter if they're spotted?
no,
It
not my
doesn't
opinion.
change the color. Okay.
If you have a black tint to it, it might change the color a little bit. A black hide ends up turning into like a grayish olive color,
Mm-hmm.
as versus the red color that way that the like a Hereford will give you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it does kind of variate. I did a hide one time that I got from a neighbor, and it was kind of a brindleish red, but it had a bunch of a lot more black in it than it did the red, and it came out like a red color. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was not it ended up being a nice hide that way.
Yeah. Interesting. How
Yeah,
about
it's just like it's like Forrest Gump. You never know what you're gonna get.
how about cow versus bull?
Bull thicker hides, and not necessarily. I mean, I guess that's kind of the general is your bulls are going to be a thicker hide, and then your cow's probably going to be a little bit thinner. Um, I've had cows that are like super super thin,
Mm-hmm.
and like I'll grade them out and I'll look at them and go, oh, okay, that looks like it's going to be a thicker string, and then by the time I'm done with the process of it, and then I go cut it up, and then it ends up being super thin, and I really don't have to split a whole bunch off, or I'll just split off the high ends of it and then go to braiding with what's
All
there.
right. Okay. So we're going to talk about a few pronunciation, regional definition differences. So Makate, which is my grandfather always called it McCarty,
Mhm.
is just any kind of rope. Do you agree?
um yes and no. And it depends on what you're referring to. Once again, I'll go back to like my dad would have told me when I was a kid, hey, um tied up with the mecate, or bring me the mecate. But to me, when I hear mecate, it just right off the bat, I don't think of anything else except for a horsehair rope that way.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a mecate for me. Um, same thing with like a with like a soga. Um, for some ungodly known reason, and a, a a strip of rawhide has become a soga,
Mm-hmm.
and that's from my knowledge and what I've asked around, and just even like you can go on Google, and Google will tell you what a soga is,
Mm-hmm.
and a soga is a rope.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like a strap of rawhide or a strip of rawhide, a correa is a more correct term in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I think that goes along with regional, like you were talking about before. Um, because Argentine, South America type stuff, that's where the soga is. But I don't know how they differentiate that. I don't know why they would call that. Because once again, like I mentioned, a soga would be, even like a rawhide braided riata that way,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or a Cecil rope. That's a soga.
A
Um,
what?
Cecil rope,
I don't know what that is.
grass rope.
Okay.
Yeah, like Cecil.
Like
Um,
like a lasso? Is that like
it could be, sure.
okay.
Yeah, yep,
That's the where I've mainly seen grass ropes was I've seen
yeah.
a few of those.
Well, like Cecil rope is what you would tie up like I guess like trees with, That's a Cecil rope, like a twisted Cecil. I don't know how to explain it to you.
All right. And Quart is pronounced how?
Cuarta.
Okay. And then it's also called a Ramal in some regions.
Um,
It says here in my notes.
that See, I was talking to Jan at the Rawhide gathering this last year, and I was mentioning to him that my dad had told me that the cuarta or the ramel might have came from, or actually, I'm sorry, let me go back. That the cuarta might have came a broken ramel. You
Huh.
know, somebody somehow or another it got busted up, and instead of being a 36-inch ramel, you know, they might have had 2 foot of this thing, and somebody, you know, used it, and that's a cuarta means quarter.
That makes sense.
So that that when my dad told me that, that's kind of the same thing that I said. Oh, well, that kind of makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
somebody somewhere along the way busted something and, you know, made it, instead of throwing it away and make it non-useful, they kind of made it work for them.
Right.
Once again, I don't know if that's correct or not, but it sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Is there anything you would what would you pass on to the younger generation?
Anything to answer any questions and be available for help for them. I think it's super important that we share our knowledge of what we do and what we know. Um, you know, I have a 20-year-old son who's in Missouri now, and you know, he's always helped me with hides. He's always put up hides with me and so on and so forth. And um, I would tell him, hey, you know, let me show you how to do this or how to tie this button, or, you know, let me show you how to do this braid. And then he just flat out just told me, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't want to know anything about it. It frustrates me.
Yeah.
And, you know, me, myself, I wish I had somebody to show something like that, you know, um, so I could share that with them.
Yeah.
And that's what I would want, you know, anybody who's a braider, if they have the knowledge to do so, share it with them. Share it with the kid, man. I
Yeah.
mean, that I think that's the greatest thing that you could do like that. And not just rawhide. I think that's
Right.
just in general, you know.
That's why I'm here today, because my grandpa would take me to the shop and say, this is how I split strings, and it was completely over my head, but he put a Spanish ring knot in my hand every time I was there, hey, do you know how to
Right,
tie this? Do you remember how to tie this? And
right.
it was important. The history was what was important to him, and that's what planted a little seed. And then,
Sure.
he's been gone a while, but we're here
That's
today
right. That's right.
because
Yep.
of
And
that.
that's kind of the same thing as, you know, like with my dad, you know, like you mentioned, he planted a little seed somewhere along the line, and it, you know, it might have taken me 30 years to figure out that that's what I wanted to do, but um you know, he did, like you said, he did plant a little seed, and oddly enough, for some ungodly known reason, it's funny how stuff like that works. I don't have a braiding background. Um, there's minimal things that my dad knows how to do. I mean, he knows how to tie cinches.
Mhm.
Um, he knows how to build horsehair cabrestos, which is it's a full, it's what you would call a halter anyways, that way, but it's
Okay.
all made out of horsehair, twisted horsehair, and it's all one piece,
Hmm.
and it they make it so it's basically a bosal, and then from there it goes off to the lead rope, and then that ties onto your saddle, and then they make a head stall out of the other hair.
We'll find a picture and add it to this because I have no idea what that looks like. So,
I'll have to see if my dad has something like that.
yeah.
But they, you know, I say they because I'm in Mexico. My dad and my grandfather, and then I guess my great uncle were the ones that used to do um horse tack that way and whatnot. Um, and like I say, it's weird because there's no braiding involved in it, but yet there's some sort of horse tack that came from it. Um, and the curiosity that comes from it on my end is just it's kind of weird because I've talked to my dad and I'll ask him questions and so on and so forth and say, well, did you guys ever do anything with rawhide at all, or nobody braided or anything like that? No, he says, but your grandfather would do stuff with rawhide. Well, what would he do? And he told me one time that like I mentioned before, they lived in Mexico. They're from my family's from Chihuahua, Mexico, and so they're just desert people too. But they were basically starving, when my dad was growing up, and very little work to be had. So he spent a lot of time with my grandfather, and he says that they would go collect firewood and go walk, the desert and whatnot. And my dad tells me that my grandfather would always be looking out for dead animals, whether it be a donkey or a burro or a dead cow or horse or whatever, was available. And when they'd find something like that, he would do the best that he could to take off the hide.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would take it down to the river and they would bury it. They dig a hole and bury that hide in the sand and then come back the next day and then take it out.
Hmm.
So essentially what he was doing was tempering that hide in sand.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would come back, bring it to the house, and then he would cut it up in correas and fix his sawbucks with it. His donkey sawbucks because they didn't have horses, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he would repair that. He would repair chairs for my grandmother, and
Mm-hmm.
just put rawhide to use that way.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I kind of find it odd that you know all those many years, and then finally it kind of comes back to me that way somehow or some way.
Right.
But I guess it's in the interest.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Do you have something you're especially proud of that you've made?
Um, I guess everything. I can't really single any one item out. Um, I mean, sometimes things work out, and you look at it and you go, "Oh wow, that came out really cool." You did a good job at that. And then some things you look at it and you go, "Man, I can't get my knife sharp enough for that." Then I'll
I
just give it to the dog.
I do know that feeling. Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, and that's kind of the way it goes. They say that the knife's your best friend, and you'll learn from it,
Yeah.
and it is true. But I got a button right there that I cut off here the other day. So, and I got piles of them. There's another heel knot that I cut off the other day. So, I mean, it's just that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
And like before, it used to like I I'd tie a button and then I'd look at it and go, oh wow, that came out good. Crap, I missed a spot. And I'd be like, well, you really can't see it. And I just that is just not the way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's got Rawhide's got to be perfect in my opinion that way. If you're gonna braid it to where it's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Randy says that you don't want to send out anything, meaning like you don't want to make an item and send it out and have to make an excuse for it. Meaning that basically it's got to be perfect. You don't want to have somebody call you back and be like, "Oh, hey, you missed a spot in that nose button," or
Mm-hmm.
your bodies, or you missed a spot in your over two under twos type thing. So um, that's I kind of believe in that. I think
Yeah.
that's true.
Is there other media that you've worked with?
I do a little bit of leather work. Um, and I've done leather work, you know, just very, very crudely, don't get me wrong. And I've done it probably, oh shoot, maybe 96, 95, something like that, off
Okay.
and on, you know. I got into it a little bit more once I started braiding because I wanted to incorporate um quartz or poppers into my quartz, and I wanted to do them, tooled and with a backing and stitched, and so now I'm kind of particular about it. I just didn't want to go ahead and use a 8-9 ounce veg tan and just be plain Jane type stuff. So I really like tooling and incorporating that in
Mhm.
my rawhide stuff. So
Why did you pick up leather work?
um I worked at a feed store when I was in high school, and one of my jobs was to stamp names in the back of a belt. So the customer would come in, buy a belt, and then we would offer, oh, do you want your name in the back of that? And I had no idea what I was doing at all whatsoever. And my boss at the time, Richard Willard, he's like, here, let me show you how to do this. I don't have time to do that. So that's kind of how I got into that. And
Hmm.
then just kind of curiosity after that. And then, when I left to Nevada the first time in my 20s, um, we'd always have to build tack and, build it for myself and, or
Yeah.
try to anyways. And then I worked at a pack station in outside of Bridgeport, California for Virginia Lakes Pack Outfit. And we'd have to do repairs and stuff like that. So that kind of sparked my interest in that too, as well. And then along the same lines as looking at stuff and being all, oh, wow, that's cool. I don't
Right.
have no money for
Yeah.
that.
No kidding.
So now it's like, well, I see it and I go, well, I could try to build that and I'll give it a shot. And if it looks good, then I'll keep it. If not, then we'll throw it in the trash.
Did you do any horsehair twisting?
um, no, like I mentioned to you before, my dad builds he could build cinches, and that's what they used to build them out of was horsehair. But no, I've never had the opportunity to do that. Um, he actually came out to the house in Fallon there a couple years back, and he was showing me how to do it.
Hmm.
And it's a total different art, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a total different art. And it's a total different art the way that it's done. Um, Probably, I guess I could say the way that it was done originally without machinery.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've seen the way that they twist hair that way. He'll get a stick, notch the end of the stick to where there's like just a notch in that stick that way. And then maybe about a quarter of the way from that, he'll punch a hole in that stick and run a nail through it. So you actually turn that stick and you wrap your hair around that notch that he puts on the end of that stick,
Hmm.
and then you start turning it and walking backwards. There's a video on it that some like an older video that has like a couple cowboys in there twisting hair like that. And you walk backwards and he sits there with a bunch of hair, and he's pulling it out little by little, and you walk backwards. And I mean, like I said, it's definitely an art like that.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
really.
You were
Uh,
talking about making a Feodor out of horsehair. Talk about that a little bit.
um, if I could get him to make me one, that'd be ideal. That'd be great.
Oh,
I'd
but
like to be. I'd like to be there to help him out do that.
yeah.
And there's a bunch of things that I'd like to have my dad out um, to do so that I could do stuff with him and learn. how he does that. Like he could tie you a Fyodor, like, I mean, like that. And it's like, and then he'll go, "Did you pay attention?" No, I didn't pay attention. You were done before I
Fast.
even you were done before I even got started thinking about it.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I would like to build build some Fyodors like that out of horsehair. I think that it's good. There's see, that kind of goes back to the traditional deal about it that way. Um, you know, they're specific tools that were made that way for a reason.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, not too long ago there was a post somebody made about some mecates, and somebody commented on it and said, "Oh no, I'd never use something like that. That's too rough on my horse's neck." And it's like, well, I understand that. Sometimes it's even rough on your hands, but in my opinion, those those tools were made for a certain reason, you
Right.
know. And you know, that's kind of why I'd like to stick with stuff like that. That's
Mhm.
that you know, I look at it and I go, "Oh man, why are they calling it that when it's not called that?" You know, I guess if it's traditional, then you should be traditional about it. You know, you should know how to say it traditionally if you're
Right.
gonna want to be traditional about it.
How many, you've met a lot, been to a lot more gatherings than I have, met more braiders. How many of
Mhm.
them do you think want to be 100 or 90% traditional versus outside the box? Like one of the braiders that does really beautiful work makes loping hackmores out of paracord, which I don't consider traditional at all, but he's a very talented braider with beautiful patterns. And
Um,
so what, where are people at?
I mean, if you could think out of the box and it works for you, why not?
Yeah.
You know, um, I'm not really. I mean, I say that I want to stick with tradition that way, but I also think out of the box.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I'll do segmented nose pieces sometimes, and
Hmm.
that's not really traditional. Um, Sometimes I just do them and I go, "Oh wow, that looks kind of cool."
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but you know, like Len Yule was an outside of the box thinker like that. That's kind of where I got my ideas from him to do segmented nose buttons that way as well.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I guess in the end, it's not really wrong or right. I'm
Oh
as
yeah.
long as you're as long as you're holding true um to what that tool is. You know, if it's a bossal, make it correct.
Right.
Um, you know, don't you, I guess you can't skip around and cut corners on it is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Um, and that's kind of what keeps you honest with in braiding rawhide. You
Hmm.
can't really cut corners on it.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, I think you know, like those loping hackamores. I think they're great. I think they have a purpose.
Hmm.
You know, could they be traditional and be made out of rawhide and leather? Sure,
Yeah.
but maybe that's the medium that he likes working with, and
Yeah.
and obviously it works for him.
Yeah. And he has
You know,
demand for it,
yes,
you know.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I don't think that that's something that should be overlooked. You know,
Yeah.
clearly, if it's working out for you, like I mentioned, go with it.
Hmm.
Go. Um, you know, that I guess there's really not anything. There's no book that says you have to be 100% traditional about
Right. Okay. Well,
it. Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.